But today, our workshop is all about free writing. So, free writing is something that has a few different uses within songwriting. So, we're going to talk about what is free writing and how can you use it. And then we're going to do a bunch of exercises as well. But kind of show of hands or something, how many of you have used some form of like free writing or something like that to for your own songwriting? So Dory has, Stu has, Ron, Jay. Looks like a few others don't have their hands up, but yeah. So today will be something that it may be familiar to some of you, but it also might be new to some of you as well. So this will be a great time to kind of get up to speed and kind of learn a skill that you can keep on practicing, because I think it is a skill that you can get better at over time, and you may struggle with it while we're doing this today just because you're not used to it. But don't feel discouraged if it doesn't feel natural, because most things don't feel natural when you first start doing them. If anybody's driven a stick, that's kind of what it's like in songwriting. Is you might kill the car a few times before you get able to shift well, but by the time you get up to speed, you'll be like looking at your phone, driving and shifting at the same time. Not saying that I've ever done that, but that's kind of how it goes. So I am going to share my screen. And so what are we going to cover? So we've already kind of mentioned it, but why is free writing important in songwriting? So we're going to cover that. There's also really 4 powerful uses that free writing can bring to your songwriting. We'll do some exercises, and then of course, this is a very sharing and supporting space. So, one of the goals is to share some of the work and some of the things that we're writing today, and definitely support each other in the creative endeavor. And hopefully you'll leave with tools that you can use over and over again within the workshop. So songwriting is a creative skill, and songwriting is interesting because it uses both your emotion and your logic. So it kind of uses your feelings and your thinking mind. And you can exercise your mind to tap into your creative subconscious and really where some of the best ideas live. So free writing is how you can really start to access an unfiltered creative mind and really start digging for the really great ideas and images and just general material for your songwriting as well. So I wanted to give you an example of some free writing that I had done, and this is a sense-based free writing, or someone maybe call it an object writing. Pat Pattison calls it object writing. So I will, when I'm looking to sit down and write songs, I'll sometimes just start with a random word. And the random word that I selected in this example ended up being strawberries. So I used my senses to write about strawberries. So I set a timer for about 5 minutes. And here is what I free wrote from my senses, not editing, just whatever comes to mind, I put it down. And I tried to touch on each of the senses: the sight, sound, taste, touch, smell, and then movement from like what's going on in the environment. So what I wrote was, just outside of town by the airport, there's a field where you can pick your own strawberries. You can see the airport off to the left. There's a gravel road on one side and an oil highway on the other. There's a sign that says pick your own. The best time to go is just as the sun is going down. Shadows from the shelter belt loom over the rows of green plants with dashes of red. The air smells like summer. It's that mix of plants, dust, and humidity. You can smell the tar from the road and the exhaust from the cars that go by now and then. We grab some baskets and start inspecting the rows for the biggest, reddest, and juiciest strawberries. There are grasshoppers and flies that move around us. We pick the berries and plop them into our basket. Your smile was a mirror reflecting the sun. It was like that flash, it was like that flash was in slow motion and it took my breath away. Those smiling, or those eyes smiling. So that was a sense-based writing that I had done. And I actually ended up turning this into a song. And I will change screens here. And I'll play for you what it ended up becoming. It ended up becoming a song called Those Summers. So this is what the free writing kicked off what ended up becoming this final song. So we'll take a listen and then come back and discuss.
There's a place where the shadow of a shelter belt hangs over fields of strawberries, where a homemade sign says pick your own. It's where we played in the hazy days of August, chasing shade with the dust and grasshoppers of retreat off a gravel road. Sweet nectar of memories, it flows in my mind. I wanna go back, I wanna go back again. Back to those summers, picking berries in the country. Those summers, mowing grass and making money. Man, I wish Grandpa could take us on his boat. If I had a time machine, it's the first place I go. To those summers, those summers. The county fair, on the midway, playing games on my first date. Man, I was so nervous, but I tossed those rings till I won the prize. And then we walked home under the cottonwoods that night. Like Hollywood had written it, I had the first kiss of my life. Sweet nectar of memories, it flows in my mind. I wanna go back, I wanna go back again. Back to those summers, picking berries in the country. Those summers, mowing grass and making money. Man, I wish Grandpa could take us on his boat. If I had a time machine, it's the first place I go. To those summers, those summers. Now condos were built where the strawberries grew, and Grandpa's been gone since July of '02, and none of the seasons feel like they used to. No, not like those summers, picking berries in the country. Those summers, mowing grass and making money. And man, I wish Grandpa could take us on his boat. If I had a time machine, it's the first place I go. To those summers, those summers. And there's a place where the shadow of a shelter belt hangs over fields of strawberries, where a homemade sign says pick your own.
So, thank you. So did you see where some of that material came from, you know, seeing the object writing from strawberries, and then it ended up sort of growing into that song? Obviously, there were some other development tools and stuff that I used, but any observations that you guys took away from hearing me read the writing and then listening to the song?
for me, it was really interesting how the strawberries story brought in all the other or brought in the other aspects of your song, grandfather, and development. I don't know. It was really cool how one thing just led to other places.
Yeah, absolutely. Pierre?
Yeah, your use of imagery was just fantastic. Like, it definitely brought me back. And even though, like I said, I didn't have a grandpa who gave me boat rides, I felt like I wanted to have a grandpa that gave me boat rides, and to take it from strawberries, like I say, and then going on the first date and going to the fair. And wow, yeah, like that's definitely, the senses were in overdrive there, and in a good way. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, any other thoughts on that? Eve said the bridge added something special. Yeah, I tried to contrast the bridge to the other parts. If you notice, the chords went to more of a minor thing there, where it's kind of like now we're in present day, and there's condos where all of this stuff used to be. It changes the mood a little bit. So that was intentional, to kind of change the looking back part to present day. Was kind of the thought there. Jay, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, so along with the musical choices you were just describing, I feel as though the parts with the grandfather and really your description is very decisive. And I feel that because of not just repetition of it, but because how each one is so specifically decisive, it helps the song continue its movement. And so you always know where you are in each part of the song versus ever drifting, or you're anchored really well, and you move and then you're anchored. And I feel as though it's a decided song structure.
Awesome. Thanks, Jay. Stu says it's clear that I've done it before, gone from prose to a song, a lot of shaping to a song form. Yeah, we're actually going to do some of the exercises that I actually use to create this song. Because when I sat down to write, I had no clue what I was going to write about. Like, it didn't start off like, hey, I want to sit down and write a song about summers and like, here's the story. It literally started with the word strawberries while I was watching TV. And then I did some of these exercises, and there, a lot of what we're going to go over today, I learned from Andrea Stolpe. I don't know if some of you are familiar with Andrea, but she was one of my instructors through Berkeley, and her book, 10 steps to, I think it's 10 steps to effective storytelling or something along those lines, kind of walks through some of these steps. I've kind of adapted it to my own personal way, but if you guys are interested in expanding more, check out Andrea's books because they're very, very helpful. So I'm going to go back and share my screen. Whoops. Let me get the right program up here. All right, so moving on to the 4 ways that you can use free writing, and this is kind of my take on how I use free writing. There's 4 things that really are the most powerful ways, and I like top 4 lists and top 5 lists, so I like to break things down into chunks. So the chunks of when I think about free writing is, number 1, discovering song titles. Free writing can be a great way to find new titles. It also helps you create verse material. We saw that in my Those Summer song. Also, it helps you create chorus material. I'll give you tips on how you can create chorus material. And then one of the things that, you can free write and not even worry about what's going to go into a song. Free writing is a great exercise just to train your creative mind to access sense-based material kind of on demand. Like, when you do sit down to write, how do you tap into some of those deeper thoughts and deeper images? So Pierre, you had said that song put you into the scene, and I love to hear that, because that was my goal as the writer, was because I was trying to use those sense-based words, right? So sense-based free writing, writing from your senses, is how you pull in your listener to your song. It's when you hear showing and telling in songwriting, that's the showing part. You're showing them pictures that they can experience in the theater of their mind, so it puts them into the song. So when you think about free writing itself is really writing whatever comes to mind. If you think it, write it. Don't edit it. Don't worry about rhyming. Don't worry about, structure. You can time it. A lot of times I'll set it for 5 minutes and just, write as much as I can in 5 minutes. You don't have to time it either. Some people will set kind of their limit is pages. If any of you have done The Artist's Way with Julia Cameron, her kind of version of this is the morning pages, where, right when you wake up, you should write 3 pages of whatever comes to your mind and kind of flushes your subconscious as well. Again, don't focus on rhymes or structure, just write whatever. And then if you're writing with pen and paper, like Adam maybe today, just go from brain to hand. Just don't pick up the pen, just keep writing and go wherever your mind goes. You may start with strawberries and end up with humpback whales, right? Like, if your mind goes there, like, just follow it. Like, there's no rules. Don't feel bad if you're all of a sudden, going off course. So that's kind of the real core of free writing. So free writing, again, can be sense-based, like we saw with the strawberries, or you can also do emotional free writing, where you free write about what someone or yourself is feeling. So there's a couple of different ways that you can think about it. You can think about sense-based, where you're like, what is happening from a sensory perspective? And you can also free write from what's happening inside from an emotional perspective as well. Or what's really cool is to try to take an emotion and describe it through the senses, which that becomes really powerful as well. So sense-based free writing is where you take a topic, which is usually a person, place, or a time, or a thing, and then write from the senses, as we said: sight, sound, taste, touch, smell, movement. And like I said, Pat Pattison calls this object writing. So let's hear from Pat on his thoughts on this. And for those of you who are familiar with Pat, or who are not familiar with Pat, he's also an instructor at Berklee College of Music, and he's the author of the book Writing Better Lyrics.
So object writing is a 10-minute morning exercise, the purpose of which is to give you easy access to your sense memories, to open the channels, your sense channels, in what you see, hear, taste, touch, smell, how your body responds in terms of heart rate, in terms of breathing, in terms of pulse, in terms of aches and pains, which I call the organic sense, or I just call it body. And then the 7th is the kinesthetic sense, the sense of motion, the sense that you stimulate when you roll down a hill as a kid to get up dizzy, the sense that is that's created billion-dollar industries called amusement parks, where you stimulate your kinesthetic sense. It's also the sense of what's around you, that whole thing. So those 7 senses, and they are the thing that makes you the unique creature that you are. And that is defined not by your political beliefs or your religious beliefs or any of that stuff. That is defined by the sequence of experiences that you have had sensually that makes you different from everything else. You can interest me in what you have to say by showing me something or organizing my sense experiences in a way that I had not thought to organize them. If you are using sense-bound language, I got sunshine on a cloudy day. When it's cold outside, I got the month of May. That raises, that you see something. If I say, running down the beach, my bare feet slapping against the wet sand. Everybody in this room has a picture. Now, I know where I am, Northampton Beach in New Hampshire. The sand is brown and actually kind of a copper color. The ocean, and this particular day that's in my mind, is green with a wind and an offshore breeze. Not one person in this room had that picture. Those were my words, and my words are full of your stuff, which makes my words your words. That is to say, that's about you. And therefore you find it interesting because it's a place that you know. So by stimulating your senses, I have made my words belong to you. The purpose of object writing is to allow you to get to those places quickly.
I thought that was a very succinct way to put it, and also like kind of like an aha moment. So I thought that was great. If you have a chance to check out Pat's online courses or his books, definitely check it out. So another example that I did, and I haven't turned this into a song yet, but this is another example of sense-based writing. And this time I was kind of thinking about like, how do I capture, you know, a hometown bar? I was kind of thinking about like writing songs about like my hometown. So I was thinking about hometown bar, and my hometown is back in South Dakota. It's Mitchell. It's where the Corn Palace is. If any of you have ever heard of the Corn Palace, that's the claim to fame. But there's a bar there called the Longhorn Bar. And so I kind of wrote from the senses about that. I wrote the jukebox blasting some 80s country in the corner of the room, gruff laughter of the smokers in the back, sitting by the door. It is so easy to go out, or so it is easier to go outside and have a heater. Sound guys setting up karaoke in the front, and you can hear the cook dropping a new batch of fries and onion rings into the day-old grease. The air tastes like old basement, cigarettes, and fried food, kind of like tasting the 80s in neon light. This place feels comfortable and familiar. Beer signs and black and white photos of baseball teams that went to tournaments of the past. An old bowling shirt hangs on the wall behind the cash register. It's still old school. It's not computerized. You hear it ring each time the servers ring in orders. Everyone knows each other here. Big windows look out onto the small town main street, covered in a blanket of red and blue lights from all of the signs. Half covered in dust, but still shining. The feeling in the air is happy and content. People pull tables together so they can join each other and share some food and stories. So even just listening to it read, do you see how when you're hitting on all of those senses, it creates a picture? Even though you've never been to the place that I've been, you are putting yourself into an environment. So it's such a powerful tool. So we've talked about then sense-based. Now emotional is writing about what a character is feeling. And that could be who you're writing about in your song. It could be yourself as the songwriter. You know, a lot of us write songs as kind of a form of expression, or even sometimes to be therapeutic for us. So writing from your emotions can help you focus on what's happening inside of your body and focusing on the thoughts and emotion that really can't necessarily be expressed through the senses. And when you are free writing, either sense-based or emotional-based, Don't be afraid to switch between them, because sometimes you might start sense-based, but it may trigger an emotional response, and then you start to go emotional in the writing. So don't feel like you're limited to one or the other. It's just they're kind of where you start is really what makes the difference. So an example of some of the emotional free writing that I've done is this, and I don't remember if this was what I was feeling or if I pulled an emotion card and kind of wrote from what that inspired. But I wrote, "My heart has been broken a few times before. I have spent months in that dark place where it takes a while to dig out. I lose myself for a while. I think I share too much of my heart and my thoughts. I open everything up and people use it against me. I think I need to close off a bit, make people wonder. Don't show them everything all the time. Maybe it's foolish to protect my heart, but I guess I should be a fool sometimes. Being the fool is being innocent. The other ways haven't always helped me, so maybe changing it up can be a nice thing. I have learned over the years that no one has any of this figured out anyway. It's all just a shot in the darkness. It's funny because some people who keep to themselves annoy me. I don't understand it. People tell me that being open and authentic is what people like, but funny that it is something that I don't like about myself. I guess it does come down to a caution thing. Be careful with who you show yourself to. It could not work out in your favor." So that started as more of an emotional writing, and I don't think I turned it into a song, but as I was reading that, I thought "Protect My Heart" sounds like a song title. And "Be a Fool Sometimes" sounds like a song title as well. I think that's really cool. And that's the thing. Save your free writing and go back to it, because you may look at it differently, with a free mind. So now we're going to get into doing some exercises. But before we do any of you have any questions on what we covered so far? And go ahead and put questions in the chat. And you can also raise your hand and I'll call on you as well. So anything that comes to mind, or thoughts or questions? Pierre.
I just referring to the artist pages, because I've done that for a while, but there's some mornings you wake up and I'm just seeing if it's effective or not. I'll repeat the same line, like I'm stalled and and I'm writing the same thing. And today I'm going to, and today I'm going to. Is that something you've ever encountered when you do those kind of morning pages? Because it's like, then all of a sudden it'll open up. I might do that for a half a page or 3/4 of a page, the same line, and then the floodgates open.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not good at doing the morning pages. I seem to do more of like the object writing, and usually it's at different times of the day. I would like to do it in the morning, but I usually have to take the dogs out, and like there's just mornings are not my time. I kind of have other stuff to do before I have to work, but no, I think there are days where it's just you just have whatever, for whatever reason it has that kind of like block, and then all of a sudden that'll just go away as well. So yeah, I think it can definitely change for sure. Leslie.
I've been doing morning pages pretty religiously for God, I'm guessing 15 years. And lately, my goal with it is to try to write them as soon as possible after I wake up, which sometimes the best I can do is like 20 minutes, because I'm trying to access more of my unconscious.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
and I also in them, and I handwrite them. The other thing I do is, if after I've written something, because it is free write, but the editor sneaks in there, I'll underline it and put a star in the margin, and that means songwriting material.
Cool. So do you ever go way back? I know you said you've been doing it for a lot of years. Do you ever go way back into the writing and see what you can pull out?
I haven't. That is, boy, because I've got literally boxes of these pages. I usually do them on a notepad with a backing, and it became so overwhelming that I had to tear off the backings.
Awesome. Adam in the chat said his wife's been doing the morning pages for years and he can't even talk to her till she's done. That's awesome. See, my dogs don't really know what, I mean, they don't care that I would want to do something. They just want to go outside. CJ had commented about I can't feel my face when I'm with you. She said the challenge is find a new way to talk about senses. Yeah, so I can't feel my face when I'm with you. That song by The Weeknd, not only is that an interesting sense activity, but that whole song is a metaphor. The whole song is a metaphor for cocaine. So the song is written like it's a love song, but it's actually written to cocaine. So it's about I can't feel my face when I'm with you, basically about the numbing effect that cocaine has when you snort it. Anything else before we move on to the next exercises? And I'm going to do, oh, Paul.
I wanted to mention something. Morning writing is an exercise. It's kind of meant to be done and then thrown away. It's kind of like just to free your mind. And Pierre, you were talking about how you get stuck in a spot. Morning writing is only supposed to be 10 minutes. And then it's just meant to help you get through that so you don't get stuck in those spots like that. So the next time that you do go to write, you're not getting stuck. It should just be free flow conscience where you're just writing whatever comes to your mind first. It could be object writing. It could be anything like that brings you to it's just an exercise. It's like doing push-ups. It's like anything like that. It's an exercise for your mind. So, and like you were saying, you can take songs from that. I was thinking of your song I mentioned to you could be called Legs of Rewrite. Strawberry Summers would be a cool like title idea. But yeah, so it's just gets you in that place where you're thinking. And what will happen eventually is morning writing turns into like all during the day, you get these ideas and imagery and things like that come to mind. So just wanted to mention that as my experience with it and with Pat Patterson's exercise. It's a great exercise.
Yeah, definitely. The whole idea of that's the thing, is you can use it for material, or you can just use it, like you said, Paul, to exercise that part of your mind, because songwriting and being creative in any endeavor, it really is teaching yourself to kind of get into that flow state and kind of let whatever happens happen. And that's not always easy to do. And it's kind of like any muscle. If you don't use it, it starts to, you start to get, it's not apathy. What's the atrophy? It starts to atrophy.
It's the best you're going to be in the day. You just woke up, your brain's fresh. You write stuff, you get your brain going. It's kicks off the whole day. It's a great thing. It's an exercise. And then you'll find yourself later on in the day coming up with other ideas based on it. And it's really just keeping your brain fresh. So it's no pressure. Should be at no pressure. Should be 10 minutes, no more. And there you go. That's all you do with that.
I actually have a lot of ideas come to me when I'm going to sleep. So there's a ton of times where I'm having to pull out my phone and write down like a song idea, or I have a lot of ideas on what I could do in some of these workshops when I'm going to sleep too. Like my mind seems to clear up at the end of the day a little bit. So let's move on to doing our exercises here. And I'm gonna do these along with you guys. And so the first exercise is we're going to do sense-based object writing, and we're going to do a random object. And I wanted to show you guys what I got to do some of this stuff. So I ordered, these are for teaching people English or teaching kids words, but they're noun cards. I don't know if you can see them, but they're like 200, I think there's 200 flashcards in here. And I got it on Amazon. But it's literally just a box full of cards that has like pictures and nouns on them. And it's a great kind of random, like object tool. So you can also use random word generators online, but I like to use cards to have something physical to kind of pull. So what we're going to do for our first exercise is we're going to do a 5-minute sense-based object writing for an object that I pull out. I need to set my timer here as well. So I'm going to reach into the box and pull out a card and see what our object is. So the object is spoon. So it's the object, the card that I pulled is spoon. So we're going to write for 5 minutes about spoon, and then we'll come back and we'll have you guys read some of the things that you have written if you'd like to share. But I am going to start the timer now, and we'll come back. All right. So the 5 minutes is up. So go ahead and stop with what you were writing. So how did that feel? I know this may be new to some of you, might be old hat to others, but how did that feel for you doing that exercise so far? So go ahead and put it in the chat, or use the reactions down on the bottom of the screen, and then you can raise your hand and then I can call on you as well. CJ says, just thinking, how about cross-pollinating regarding senses? Describe how you feel experiencing drugs, alcohol, sports, rock climbing, etc. Make it a love song. It definitely would open up metaphors and eliminate cliches. Absolutely. So that's really, we've done some past workshops on metaphors, and on the YouTube channel, you can catch some of those workshops where we do some metaphor writing exercises, and that's exactly what you can do. It's great. Adam says it got pretty dark fast. That's just your dark mind, Adam. You're just taking it down. Susan says she would have liked to have a different noun. Funny. Yeah, see that's what's fun about these too, is especially if you're doing it to exercise, try not to like edit the words that you're writing from either. Kind of push yourself to get into what a spoon brings to mind. My writing actually didn't even include anything about a spoon. I was going to basically my grandma's kitchen, but it was more like a movie Grandma's Kitchen, and I was kind of describing that. Eve said a weird story came up. Awesome. Leslie loved it. It led to places she wouldn't have predicted. Awesome. That's what's fun about this, is you come up with stuff that you never would sit down and actually think about. Camden said he's done it before. He gets absorbed in trying to use all the senses. It doesn't feel free. Yeah, so I think that's something that you can work on, Camden, is when you feel that stop, just kind of ignore whatever you're stopped on and just write. Pierre said it brought up memories. Karen took a dark turn too. She jumped to different uses for the word spoon, jumped from noun to verb. Awesome. Ron says the words brought back numerous childhood memories. Stu says it's hard not to edit. Yep. Write without reservation because he always thinks someone will find it. Interesting. So just don't put your name on it. Andrea said it went down a sofa. Does anybody want to share what they had written? Anybody want to read what they wrote with the other members? Jay.
Yeah, sure. Spinning around, twirling in a mug full of coffee, finding cream dash sugar to it all. 'Cause my girl loves it sweet when she's waking from her sleep to get her mind sparked and ready to make ends meet.
So you were kind of writing in rhyme a little bit there.
Yeah, that's kind of the way it goes. I mean, I was like spoon. First thing in the day, I'm just getting ready. I was trying to kind of place my mind and started the day with the spoon. And it was like, okay, I'm making coffee. And I drink mine black, but when my girl's here, I'm putting cream and sugar in hers, and we're not morning people. So to save society from our sociopathy, getting some coffee is best for society.
Yeah, absolutely. My partner too, if he doesn't have coffee, he's not very friendly. So what I liked about yours, Jay, is you said something about stirring the coffee, or the way that you described the first line really created an image for me. I was instantly with you, which I think was super cool. Camden in the chat said he got obsessed with describing the actual object. Totally fine. Again, there's no rules on where you take these. But Camden says shiny metal. Oops, it jumped up. Here we go. Shiny metal in my drawer, stacking on top of each other in oddly shaped thin layers. I grab one, the metal clicks as it separates. I feel the hard engraved plate as I grip it. It is so thin to a point where it's almost sharp, but still flat, so it's safe to use. That's cool. Yeah, there's definitely images in there for sure, Camden. So very cool. And what's neat about that, what you had written, is you can use it just for practice, but what if you replace the idea of spoon with like a relationship or something, like, you know, relationships stacking on top of each other in oddly shaped layers. You know, I try to grab one, it separates, and I feel it as I grip it to a point where it's almost sharp, but it's flat, so it's safe to use. So that's where kind of that metaphor could come in as well. Leslie.
Okay, I prefer eating with a teaspoon for things most people eat with a fork. In the solitude of my isolation, no one sees me eating hot green tamales covered in Anita's chili with my spoon. No one sees me spooning up the perfect size bite of a thawing piece of key lime pie retrieved from the freezer. No one sees how I lick the spoon to enjoy every molecule of taste. No one sees, and I feel so free to enjoy my food without the worry of adhering to social conventions or the dangers of fork prongs. Spoons set me free to just be myself, to enjoy the world without the prongs of a fork. Spoons don't work well on salads.
Awesome. Yeah, that's cool. I think like the songwriter in me was like when you were talking about, I don't remember exactly how you said it, but it was something about you're free to do whatever you do, and I thought that's like that could be a cool concept for a song for sure. Awesome. Stu put in the chat, he says, 2 in a saucer means a wedding is coming. 34 years today since mine. Game of 2 spoons. 17 good. I remember the days before the wedding. Couldn't move. Headache so powerful. All I could do was lie on the floor. Worse than the worst hangover. Probably the first thing I ever did where there's no going back on this. Can't rub out my mistake, mess this up. And it's not just me. And now I'm thinking I probably have messed it up, but still. Cool. Interesting. And Tom says, you feel so soft, cold at first, but now you are warmer. We are warm together. We connect like a spoon in silent, very close. You smell so natural and clean. Your heart beats slowly, but but you are still and calm. Our bodies touching each other, our legs, my waist, and your bum, and your back in my chest. We are one as a spoon. Cool. CJ says she always hated free writing because it never translated directly into lyrics, but she can see how it would be valuable to generate ideas. Absolutely. And I think the idea is to not worry about the lyric part and just let yourself be free. Pierre.
Thanks. The old wooden spoon tucked in the drawer, waiting to be let out. The old wooden spoon has a job to do, and that's to correct my bad decisions. A curse word, a little fight, not listening, the things that I should know better. Hearing the drawer open and running to hide. I know that I shouldn't have kicked my sister, but I did. And now I'm feeling a bit nervous and scared of what's to come. Nothing too hard, just a little reminder to be nice and polite. Here comes Mom down the hall, and I'm off to the races. She was busy making spicy chili for supper, and now I'm going to feel the heat. So
Awesome.
That's when I was kind of a little bit older and you can run away from it, and it's just going to be a little, hey, stop doing that. So it's brought back memories for that. Yeah.
I love that you took it to a wooden spoon as well, because my mind was metal spoon almost the whole time, probably because of the picture. But yeah, that was cool. Thanks, Pierre. Ron.
Yeah, I think my challenge might be reading my own writing. Because when I write, it's kind of like Fast and Furious and not complete.
I've been there as well. Yes.
So what I've got is a spoon, oval or round, plain or pictured. Baby fists clamping the handle like a weapon. Food dropping, tongue searching. Metal jingling in a basket. The taste of metal running across a rough tongue. Digging in dirt. My childhood attempt at digging to China with a teaspoon. When I went in for lunch, someone covered my hole. Vain attempts, a useless effort. A carrier mechanism from plate to mouth. Clanking of spoons across my teeth. A musical instrument. And where I was going there before the buzzer rang was bringing back a memory to bluegrass festivals I used to like to go to, a big event here in Hartford every year, and people would bring 2 spoons and they would play the spoons. It was kind of a cool concept.
Oh yeah. People who really know how to play the spoons when they're like yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
impressive. CJ says she can tell when people switch from stream of consciousness writing into editor writing. Yeah, I can hear that when some people read as well, where it goes from just a free flowing thought to like it becomes a little more curated as well. Anyone else want to share what they had written for this exercise? Paul?
Yeah, it's funny you just mentioned rewriting, because I went back and did some rewriting after I did the free flow writing, which, you know, kind of is what writing is. It's a lot of rewriting. But I wrote, I poured the coffee for the janky coffee pot, the same pot that I've used for years. I always use the same mug that my daughter gave me birthdays ago. Everything's a constant. But where's my trusted spoon? The one with the extended handle with the ancient markings, just the right size for the cup. Why do they go missing when you need them the most?
Awesome.
And then initially I started writing a song, because I jumped to songs immediately from doing the free writing you're talking about. So I wrote, Spoon is a boy who lost all his toys, trying to get into the groove. He met a girl with purple hair at the Strawberry Town Fair, said hello with nothing to lose. They took a boat ride down the fake seaside. Spoon got lost in that moment of time. Spoon got lost in that moment of time. And that's where I need another line.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. And see, just like there, Paul, I mean, you started writing one thing, but then it kind of sparked another idea, and that's very cool. Camden says, how important is it to use the 7 senses? He really gets hung up on that. I think the goal is to try to hit on all of them, but don't worry about it if you don't. The idea is really just let your mind go wherever it's going to go, because I think sometimes that path where you don't expect to go is where some of the magic lives. And I don't know if any of you have ever done meditation. You know, when you meditate, sometimes your mind will wander, and you know, it depends on who's kind of leading you within the meditation. Sometimes they don't want your mind to wander, but I don't think you can necessarily stop it, but just kind of go with whatever's kind of coming to mind and try to just experience it as an observer and not actually like interact with it. Like, so it's the same with the writing, where if you go off track and everything is visual for you, then that's how it ended up. You know, you're not being graded, you know, nobody's going to come and smack you or anything like that. So it's all good. One thing that you can do is try to write without, this is a fun exercise, is to try to write without sight. So don't use visual descriptions. Try to describe objects in every other sense, because a lot of times we think visually, but taking sight out of the picture can sometimes open up a lot of different ideas as well. So moving on to the next phase of our adventure here today. So the next step is going to be another free writing exercise, but this time, instead of writing about an object, we're actually going to write about an emotion. So the same concept applies, where we're going to set the timer for 5 minutes, and then we're going to free write about an emotion that we choose from my emotion cards that I have. So just like I got noun cards, I actually got emotion cards that are also used to teach people English and to teach kids. So I'll shuffle the deck here a little bit. So the emotion that we're going to write about is being ecstatic or very happy or blissful. So being ecstatic or happy is the emotion that we're going to write about. And I'll set the timer, and then we will get started, and we'll go now. All right. So our time is up for that. So how did that feel for you? Was that different than writing about an object, or how did the emotional writing feel to you? And Camden, I'll read what Camden wrote in the chat. He says, happy. Smiles on faces that indicate joy of an event that is preferred over the dull life that flows through the streams of our everyday. You see how it lightens your load and you feel addicted to the lightness to a point where you need it. If you cannot find that lightness, you feel a heaviness that you want to avoid like the plague, but you always return to. You wonder how to prevent yourself from becoming heavy, but in the end, it is a force of nature. You cannot stop it, just like you cannot stop the sun from going down, but you can learn how to not be afraid of the dark. Wow, that was super cool. Awesome, Camden. Very cool. Ron said he found it a little more difficult in the emotional writing side, and Eve said it was harder to do with emotion as well. Camden liked it better. So yeah, so it's interesting how we're pulled one way or the other, you know. And definitely if something that feels a little harder for you, that's kind of a sign that that's something that maybe you can practice more to kind of develop getting better at as well. Adam wrote green tea, chocolate chip, cashew ice cream with a peanut butter coated spoon, watching Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston videos. Awesome. Anybody else want to read or share what they had written from the emotion perspective? Stu says, just any random day, walking out on the street, sunshine warms my face. There's life, moving, people, cars, trees, clouds, starting to feel better, not ill, steadily regaining myself. A fresh breeze says hello, and just for a moment, as I walk to the station, I feel good. No reason for it, but I just have a moment where I'm not worried about anything, and the world's not so bad, really. Awesome. That's really cool, Stu. Shelly, you have your hand raised.
Oops. There we are. Trying to start my video. So I did like an imagery of something. So the energy in my body builds up and all of my cells join together in reverie, singing along, hooting and hollering. This is my song. This is my song. My smile is a mile wide, my eyes wide and open. My brain is focused and clear as endorphins flood my pathways. And I know in my soul that this is what I've been dreaming of. This is my moment of, yes, I did it. I showed up, I learned, I tried, and it paid off right here, right now. Yes, yes, yes. I'm lifted up and I'm grateful.
Awesome. Cool. I like the yes, yes, yes. Like, yeah, I think that captures the emotion really well.
Thank you.
Susan has in the chat, she says, not sure if this is actually her, but anyway, she says, ecstatic happy. When I feel happy, Lifely is mostly a calm sea with no waves, sun but not blindingly bright, static, nothing dynamic, that turbulent time when there are waves, time where the waves are overwhelming and destructive, where you think you will drown. It's far from memory and you are able to float. Ecstatically happy, what is that? Age wears that down. The body grows weaker, tired, too tired for overwhelmingly happy, but peace is good. Ecstatic is ecstasy, and that seems more than I would want, more than I would like, not happy. That's super cool. What's funny about that, Susan, is what I wrote too was something about like, as I get older, there's less and less days where I feel extremely happy. Like, I would say that I feel content most of the time, but there's not as many days where I'm like, woo, happy, you know? Camden says, how many emotions are there? Tons of emotions. So if you want to look up the emotion wheel, if you Google the emotion wheel, there's a ton of different emotions that you can think through. But the emotions, like in this card pack, there's 56 that they have within just this card pack. Andrea wrote, I wrote a walk to the fair, hoping to see a romantic friend there, but not but not got deep emotion planning on what I will do there. Perfect. Jay says, I feel crack of through the air. My room sings with color, rings with flair, and my heart feels like it's hopping a scotch. As I play it back on my phone, I hear her voice and I'm home. Feel like I'm 9, writing to Santa this time. She has a way in which she shares her day, and then I put myself drift up to the sky. I should stop where I lay, take some time to take pace, but I'll just let myself stay here in this place. Cool. Karen Davis says, when I feel in love, my love, I felt as if I was floating above the ground. I was so happy during that honeymoon period, and it went on and renewed itself without even trying. I will always love you because you were very special to me. I don't expect you to love me. Awesome. Great work, Karen. Camden says, how many objects? Just kidding. Yeah. Lots of objects. So, as you can see, these things, as you do them more, you would basically get better with kind of thinking through these. And I think the more you do this as well, the less surface you get. I think your mind will kind of wash out some of the surface things that you have. And I think, Camden, are you asking how many objects are in the box? There's 200 noun cards that are in this particular set. So the next exercise that we're going to do is we're going to actually start free writing with a little bit of purpose. So let me get to, so we're going to start doing this next one as an exercise to find titles. So the idea behind this free writing is going to be finding titles. And what we're going to do is I'm going to pull a noun card, and we're going to write for 5 minutes about the noun that I pull. And then we'll go step by step kind of how you use that to find some titles. So I'm just going to dig through the box here and pull out. Oh, interesting. So this one is sun, like the sun. So I'll set my timer, and then everybody write from the senses about the sun for 5 minutes, and then we'll come back and we'll walk you through the next steps on how to use this writing to find titles. So we'll begin now. All right, so that is our 5 minutes for that first part of the exercise. We'll hold off on sharing what we had written for this because there's multiple steps to this this exercise. So the first step is really writing for 5 minutes about an object. And then the next step in the process is we'll take some time here, you know, maybe 3 or 4 minutes, and read back over what you had written in this exercise and pick out words and phrases that stick out to you that could be song titles, and really go with whatever words or phrases resonate with you that just kind of spark your writer instinct and it kind of stands out to you as a title. And write down as many as you can. And then once you have that list, go ahead and pick your favorite. So let's go ahead and all start reading over what we did, and then we'll come back in a few minutes and maybe we'll share some of the titles, or we'll just move on to the next step. But pick out words and phrases that feel like they could be titles for you, and we'll come back in a few. All right, how is that feeling for you all? I see some people still working, so maybe give it a little bit more. Did you find titles that you thought could be songs, or how did it go? I see Karen Mack shaking her head yes. Ron did too. Pierre. Perfect. Eve said yes in the chat as well. Yeah, so now I'd like you to pick one of those titles, and the next step in this process is kind of moving into, once you have a title, then you can start to use object writing to develop material for the song. So when you're songwriting, verses usually will establish and advance a who, a when, and a where within your song. So that's usually a person, a place, or a time. And the idea here is to then take the title that you had selected in the last process and write a possible who, when, and where around that title. So who could the song be or who is it happening to? When is it happening? Where is it happening? Or maybe write down all three of those things. So maybe just take a minute or two here and write and look at your title and think about what could your who, when, and where be around this specific song title. And then we'll come back and move on once we give this a couple minutes here. All right, so hopefully you have at least a who, a when, or a where, one of the three. So the next step then, once you have those, is to take one of those, or you could combine them, and use your who, when, and where, and then we'll write for another 5 minutes from our senses about that who, when, and where. So this is where we start to use the sensory-based free writing that we have practiced before to write about a who, when, and where of our song. So think about all of those senses, the senses that we talked about, and we'll come back in 5 minutes and move on to the next steps in the process. So we'll go now.
Could you say that again? I didn't quite follow what you're saying.
Yeah, so take the who, when, or the where that you had come up around your song title from the last step, and then just write for 5 minutes from your senses about that who, when, and where that you had come up with in the last step. All right, so that is our 5 minutes for that writing section. The next part of what we are going to do is starting to use that writing and using it to start to dive for material. So let me get my screen here. So I'm actually going to share what I was working on and then also talk through the next step. So the next step in the process is to make 2 columns within or on your page and start to look for phrases that sort into these columns. And the columns that you're going to have are external or sense-based lines, and then also internal or emotion-based lines. So on your page, you will actually write those things. And let me get to my screen so I can show you what I mean. Maybe. Oh, try this again. There we go. Can you see my screen? Perfect. So the title that I selected from my writing from before was Apple Cider and Warm Sweaters. So that was the song title that I did. So reading through what I had written on that, I said, it smells like a wood fire on a rainy day. The air tastes like autumn and cinnamon. The red and oranges from the trees accent the gray countryside on this overcast morning. We park the car on a gravel lot and walk through an old wooden archway to the field of apple trees behind the metal building. People are holding onto their cups of cider and coffee and just enjoying nature. Birds sing their songs above us, and a slight breeze caresses our cheeks. I love this time of year. I miss it when it gets too hot or cold. Something about the fall makes me feel like me. I feel free during this time. The days are shorter, but the world is just beautiful. It's a time of change and reflection. The trees and the animals get ready to nap for the winter, hide away in the places they go. I feel like doing that too, going inside with blankets and books, spending the days creating works of art and words, making music inside on the rainy, soaked, cold days. Maybe you could call it creative hibernation. So the next step, like I had mentioned, is making a couple of columns. So one would be external, and then the other would be internal. So the idea here is to break your phrases or words and kind of looking for phrases here. So external would be anything that's happening that's sensory. So on mine, it would be, people holding their cups of cider and coffee, that's sense based. Internal would be something about the fall makes me feel like me. That would be like the feel like me line, because that's an emotional line. So like the I feel free types of things. So the next step in the process is let's take a few minutes and go through what you had written and break out phrases into both external and internal sections. So any questions on that? I know this might be something that's new for a lot of people. CJ said, isn't there a Berkeley course for writing being unique, finding your unique voice as an artist or writer? Yeah, I think all of the Berkeley courses are really designed to do that. I'm not sure if they actually have one that's designed specifically for that. But any questions on this step is breaking the phrases down, and I'll leave my screen shared so you can kind of see what I'm doing too, but definitely work on your own for sure. All right. So I got through mine. How's everybody doing on theirs? Ron made a pained face. How is this process going? This is probably new for a lot of you, so I probably work faster than some, but how's it feeling for you? This will make sense in a minute. So the reason why we break the lines into external and internal is we've talked about it in other workshops where a lot of times in songs you show before you tell. So as you're putting together your verses and you're starting to create your sections, you will want to usually start with external details and summarize a section or summarize lines with the internal emotional why all those other things matter. So if I just read through the external details that I have in my column, it doesn't really give you a lot of emotion to hang on to. So you wouldn't understand the context, the emotional context of why these things matter. So the external for me says, smells like a wood fire on a rainy day. The air tastes like autumn and cinnamon. The reds and oranges from the trees, the gray countryside on an overcast morning. We park the car on a gravel lot, walk through an old wooden archway, field of apple trees behind the metal building. People are holding onto their cups of cider and coffee. Birds sing their songs above us. Slight breeze caresses our cheeks. The days are shorter. The trees and animals get ready to nap for the winter. Hide away in places they go, going inside with blankets and books, spending the days creating works of art and words, making music inside on a rain-soaked cold day. So as you can see, just reading through that, it's just a bunch of declarative sentences. There's not a lot of emotion, but on the same thought process is if you included only internal language, you wouldn't necessarily get the same impact without the pictures. So the internal would be enjoying nature. I love this time of year. I miss it when it gets too hot or too cold. Something about the fall makes me feel like me. I feel free during this time. World is just beautiful. It's a time for change and reflection, and I feel like doing that too. Maybe you could call it creative hibernation. Camden asks, are we doing this for just the last thing we wrote or all of them? Just the last thing that you had written, Camden, for now. So that's kind of why you break them into external and internal, is it gives you the ability to see how you're mixing the showing and the telling of your work. So the next step after you put the words into columns, then the next is to look for lines that rhyme with each other and words that rhyme with each other and put those side by side. And rhymes can cross the columns, so you don't have to stay within external or internal, but you would be basically looking for words that might rhyme. So for me, this should be so winter, and I know there was one of the lines that said shorter right here. So shorter and winter, those lines or those words rhyme because they have the ter sound on the end. So that is a consonance rhyme. So that's the least stable type of rhyme, but it's still a rhyme. So now shift your lines into rhyming pairs or really any lines that rhyme. And you can look at words within lines too. So like maybe, let's see if there's one. So like here's like breeze, right? Breeze rhymes with cheeks. So you could break those into like slight breeze, move cheeks down. Maybe there's another E word. Rainy could be. So maybe you have slight breeze, caress our cheeks, making music, and change the order of the words in the line to make them rhyme as well. So go ahead and take out, take lines and put them together and find words and lines that rhyme. So that's our next step. Camden says the world is drowned out by my thoughts, internal or external. I would say that leans more internal because there's not a lot of picture that's in that phrase. So go ahead and we'll take a few minutes and find rhyming pairs and words, and we'll come back. Okay, so how's everybody doing on this section? Sometimes it takes a while to find rhymes or edit some of the lines, but I have quite a few within mind that rhyme on the ends of the lines. And sometimes it's fun if you find internal rhymes as well and not just the ends of the lines. Camden says horrible. Yeah, I think if you don't end up with a lot of lines to work with, it does make it a little bit harder. But I think that's the more you work on doing exercises like this, the more you'll be able to come up with material for sure. So the next step then in this process is really taking a moment to develop a rhyme scheme. And this is kind of a fun exercise to do, especially when you're not necessarily feeling inspired and you don't necessarily know what to write. So you can come up with either a 4-line or 6-line rhyme scheme. So maybe I'll do for mine, I'll do AAB, and then I'll do CCB. So I'll do a 6-line verse. So now basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go look for lines that rhyme and put them into this structure. And I'm going to see if I can end the segment with an internal rhyme. So I'm going to look back up here on I'm going to put this as my last one. So I'm going to copy that. So that's going to be my B sound. So the B line is going to rhyme with me. So I'll go back up here and see. I like this line. Copy that down. Whoops. And now I have 2 couplets that I basically need to fill in here. So I'm going to go up here and see what... I'm going to use this one here. Take this one and put it here. And then I'll do my C lines. And then I'll plop that in there. So as you can see, this just really becomes a operation of moving the lines that rhyme here. So my potential verse at this point now is gray countryside on this overcast morning, field of apple trees behind the meadow building. People are holding onto their cups of cider and coffee. We park the car on a gravel lot. I miss it when it gets too cold or hot. Something about the fall makes me feel like me. So it may not make complete sense, or it may not flow exactly the way that it might end up in a song, but this gets you kind of a draft that you can then edit within your process. So the idea here is to take lines, and you don't necessarily have to use the rhyme scheme. You can move lines around and put them into whatever order makes sense for you. But the idea is to use the lines from your free writing to put them together to make a verse. So that's really kind of the next step and what I had done here. So I would probably refine this a little out after some point, but any questions on that part of the process, or I know this probably seems really unnatural for some of you, but I find it to be really helpful when trying to come up with different ideas that when I'm trying to write something I haven't written a million times before. So any thoughts or questions? Perfect. So moving on to what the next steps would be then. So once you have those lines put into that structure, you can edit it, but the next step would be to try to come up with some chorus material for this song that we have started. So in my example, I basically have started the song called Apple Cider and Warm Sweaters. So I have a draft verse. So now the next step is to think about what would the characters in the song, what would the character be feeling or thinking? So then take 5 minutes now and write from the emotional free writing on what your character could be thinking or feeling. So we'll take a few minutes and do that, and I'll add on to what I'm working on, and then we'll come back and go from here.
Chad, you're muted right
Oh,
now.
there we go. Sorry. So what I did was after I had written the parts of this is I wrote, I didn't want days like this to end. I want to spend as much time with you as I can. We can get lost in the country and the fields and the orchards. It's the best way to spend the weekend. I feel so happy and content with you. You complete the parts of me that are missing. I want to stop time and live in this moment forever. So then I broke it into possible lines again. So possible phrases. So now I can start to drop that into the different chorus structures that we've talked about in previous workshops. So we've talked about where your title lines, you can repeat the title for your chorus. That's the fastest way to write a chorus is repeat your title. You could also do a title, line, title, line. You could do a line, title, line, title. Like a lot of country songs, there's a bunch of lines and then your title line at the end. You could do your title in the beginning followed by a bunch of lines, or you could also bookend it as well. So what I would do as a next step in this process is to really, let's say we're going to do a title, line, and then a title, and then a line. So I already know my title, so I can just drop that into this structure. So now I just have to decide what other lines am I going to fill in here. I'll just do this one. Don't want days like this to end. Whoops. Take this out. And then I'll do spend as much time with you as I can, just as an example here. So now I have a chorus that I can edit as well. So I adjusted some of the wording in my verse. So I said, we're out in the gray countryside on this overcast morning by a field of apple trees behind that meadow building. People are holding on to their cups of cider and coffee as we park the car in the gravel lot. I miss this when it gets too cold or hot. Something about the fall makes me feel like me. Apple cider and warm sweaters. Don't want days like this to end. Apple cider and warm sweaters. Spend as much time with you as I can. So now in this process, I have a verse and a chorus that I can really work on and kind of develop into the rest of my song. So I know that we're running out of time and this process took longer than I thought it would, but does that make sense to you on kind of how you can use this writing to come up with new songs or things that maybe you wouldn't stop and you wouldn't necessarily sit and think about it, but you can come up with a lot of material very quickly. So what are your thoughts on how you might use this in your own writing? Anybody? Karen?
I feel like first of all, like it's a great exercise because the more I read back over my stuff, the more I realize that I lean really heavily on internal things and not a lot of specificity on imagery. So trying to go back and drop this into a format, my content's imbalanced, but I feel like it's a great tool to start with getting, I know what the bones are, like I know what the ideas are. So now I might go back and do another pass with all of that in mind and then develop out from there. So it'll take me a little longer than this exercise because it'll be sort of a combined exercise. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like do it in waves.
Yep. Yeah. I think the idea is just to kind of keep you getting ideas and whatever works. I think, we do these workshops in a linear fashion where we're like step by step, but songwriting is actually not linear, right? Like you could come into it from so many different angles, but the idea is kind of just knowing what options you have, as you are writing. Cause I think that's what we do is when we get stuck, sometimes we don't know how to get unstuck, right? So sometimes you might have half of a song written and you're like, I don't know where to go next, or I need something else. Well, maybe free writing is how you sort of flesh out some of those ideas for sure.
Yeah, if
Um,
anybody has a drawer full of bridges, please call me.
Bridges, yeah. Awesome. Ron, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I think this process was completely different from anything that I've followed in the past. I did struggle because it was new. And I think I found some areas where I could have done a little bit better with organizing. I think, like I put in the chat, the 2 columns, and I think that's where I started breaking down. But it's important to find out where you broke down, but it's a great process. And I think it's a great tool. So thank you.
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah. And like I said, I learned this process from Andrea Stolpe. So if you want to get her book, it's not a long read. She has a lot of great information and kind of explains why each of these steps matter. And it's her 10 steps to storytelling or something in songwriting. So definitely check it out.
Yeah,
Paul.
many of her books.
Yeah. Paul.
Yeah, I think it's a really good exercise. But my issue with it is the coming to what is the story and what is the conflict that's going on. Because when we start just putting things together and then we look back at it, it's an exercise. And sometimes you can get lucky. It's kind of like throwing spaghetti against the wall or throwing something against the wall. And sometimes you get lucky and it might generate some more thoughts. But at the end of the day, it needs to be a story, or it needs to have some kind of conflict. And what is the purpose of it? And being that it's a song, we don't have all this exploratory things like, where we can have a bunch of words to describe everything. So it's getting to those points, it's condensing a whole story into like two paragraphs, really, or not even paragraphs, two verses and a chorus, right? So
Sure.
I like the exercise. I just don't know if it's going to get us there faster. Like, and the idea of working from the title, I think is the best idea. In Nashville, it's title first, then the verse. That's the saying they have in Nashville. And they'll have guys even have title books. I have friends who that's all they do is write titles, and they go into workshops and have titles and things like that. So my question to you is like, what would the story be for this? What is the conflict, and what is the takeaway? Like, what would you want the person to take away from the song at the end of this?
The song that I had written?
Well, yeah, what we started here. Like, in other words, let's dig deeper and see what the story could be for this.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's what your next step as the writer is to determine from this draft of because really what you're trying to do here is set up a strong who, when, and where, right? And the thing that you need to come up with as well is a what and a why does this matter. So what you're talking about is that story progression, which once you establish what your emotional center is, right? Like, so in my particular song, it's really kind of like loving this time of the year, loving spending time with the person, right? So we've sort of, or I would have established that in my song where it's like, here's the situation, we're out in the country, I love spending time with this person. Second verse would introduce conflict, or like the but of the situation, right? Like, everything's good, but this isn't going to last forever, or like maybe it turns out that things aren't as good as we thought they were, and then you flip it back around to I just wish I could spend this time with you, even though, you know what I mean? So that's what you still have to flesh out. But I think if you just started writing, I think you miss opportunities for imagery sometimes. So free writing helps you come up with one material when you don't have any, because a lot of times you do have a title or you have some sort of idea, but what free writing can do is give that to you when you don't have anything. And one of the last workshops that we did was all about writing from a title. So we've covered a lot of that information in the past. So this is a totally new, so this workshop is definitely not all encompassing from how to develop hooks. And there's another workshop that's on our YouTube channel as well that talks about hooks and all of that. So this is really coming up with how does free writing help you? And you do have to think about all that other stuff too. And it comes down to, this is an art, not a science. If we could just plop everything into a computer and have it spit out a song, that would be awesome, but that's not how it works. So, but I definitely see where you're coming from, Paul, because sometimes you'll do this exercise and it won't make any sense and it'll just be crap. But here's the thing, it's still got you thinking about rhyme. It's still got you thinking about structure. You still practiced a process, because I think knowing the process is helpful even more than getting the result a lot of the times, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah, I see that where you're coming from with that point. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a vast field of things, and these are exercises, you know.
For sure. Definitely. Jay.
Chad, again, man, thank you so much for hosting this. I can never thank you enough. Locally, there's been a little small workshop I've been participating in hosting, and right now we have a new story writer, which is not related to music, but it is in so many ways. And so it's been really interesting seeing the things that I'm trying to engage with this writer and help her bring her stuff out while also dealing with songwriters. And since I'm not strong in music theory, there are so many tools in this that I already use, interwoven where necessary, but I didn't really have the internal, external portions of it. And so I feel that that's going to help me as a tool to kind of translate things for for story writers, but also for me who didn't start with music theory, kind of say, okay, well, I've got my lyrics down. Now I want to commit to, okay, a root key, or how do I want my melodic or harmonic progressions to go? What am I going to be drawing on? And being able to really look at these tools to kind of strip things down to more root elements may help me define, oh, you know what? Maybe I will throw a counter melody on this based upon this new emotion that I didn't think about before. And maybe I'll syncopate it like this. It's just so many little nuggets of gold in here. So again, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And that's one thing that I didn't mention too is we've talked about in past workshops creating that lyrical palette, so when you are doing the strum and hum thing, or maybe you're top lining and you're writing to a track, having a list of lines from your free writing can be like a creativity spark to actually singing something over your music. So I've done that as well, where I don't put the lines into any sort of structure. I just try singing them over the music that I have. And then sometimes something will stick and I'll be like, oh, that's really cool. And then I'll just run with that. And sometimes it uses what I have on the page already, but sometimes it goes somewhere completely different. I think that's where we don't want we want the process to help us and not hinder us. So never feel like you have to go with what you already have, because you have to serve the song, right? Whatever the song is telling you to do, you have to follow that and make it the best song it can, and sort of get out of its way sometimes, for sure. Dory.
Yeah, I just want to say I love this process for the purpose that it serves as a catalyst to get to other things. That's what's so great about it, because you can be mechanical, but then as you go and you're editing, like I'll give you an example. When we were looking for the rhymes, then we went to the very last step. I found myself changing things to go deeper into the plot. So I think it's a great catalyst. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, thank you. And so upcoming workshops, next weekend, we're going to get together and it's just going to be open discussion. So if you have any questions or things that you want to cover, we can help each other. That's at 10 a.m. on July 16th, which is a week from today, 10 a.m. Central. So hopefully you can join us for that. And then after that, August 6th, there's going to be a melody tools and kind of a melody fundamental workshop, which will kind of set you guys up for September, which is going to be top lining and setting lyrics to melody. So definitely will be a couple of fun workshops, because with the survey that I did with you guys, a lot of people said they wanted to learn more about melody and how that goes together. So we'll start with the fundamentals and then kind of get a little bit deeper into top lining and things like that as well. Any final questions or thoughts before we wrap up today? Paul.
I had, I've done these sort of things before, and I had I got this really great book that I want to suggest to everybody. It's called, it looks like Razzle Dazzle Writing.
Cool.
It's a children's book, but it actually has all these wonderful things that it's meant to be taught young people, but it actually is the exact same process and things that you would use as a writer, even as a grown-up. It's basic, but it's not, kind of thing. And there's another title from the same person here. It's Melissa Fournay, and it's really good stuff. It's really great writing exercises and this and that. And I want to say too, thank you so much for doing this. This is a great course, a great class for everybody, a great workshop. It's really important and great that people do this. And songwriting is really, it's like the writers of the movies and things like that. It's the backbone of all the music and stuff like that. And the current generation of music really needs really good songwriters. So it's really great that you're doing this. I want to say thank you very much for this workshop and the opportunity to be here. So I appreciate that very much.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming, and hopefully you can, join us again. So we have a good time. All right, well, everybody, that's going to wrap up for today. I know we went a little over the 2 hours, but I think it was great discussion and stuff. So thank you for coming, and for those of you who are new, hopefully you'll make it back, and we'll see you guys in about a week.
Thanks.
Bye,
Chad.
everybody.